has taken over. Let's go. It's Ferrall. Coast to coast. Steaks, chicks, stacks. You and I are going to make a lot of money. It's Ferrall. Coast to coast.
It's Ferrall Coast to Coast in the biggest way possible right here on SportsGrid and SportsGrid Radio. Great to have everybody with us here today on a Tuesday. Carver High in for Scotty. No Joe today. Joe out on assignment. He will be with me tonight on the radio show, but Davis Maddock will be hanging with me the first couple of hours. We'll get him in next segment. We have a very busy show. Lots of NFL still moves being made by the minute here with guys signing, new teams, new faces in new places. That's for sure. We have Conference Championship Week well underway. Our favorite part of Conference Championship Week, which is afternoon basketball, including the Irish up on Georgia Tech at the half in the great 12-13 game at the ACC tournament in Washington, D.C. But we got the Irish with 1.5, so we're involved here this afternoon. We have some NBA tonight. We've got the players this week down at TPC Sawgrass, so very busy Tuesday on Coast to Coast. We start, as always, with the birthday roll call. Here we go. Max Duggan, 23. Jeremy Grant, 30. Marvin Jones, 34. Donta Hightower, 34. Evgeny Dodonov, 35. Mikko Koivu, legend, 41. David Williams, 45. Casey Mears, 46. Antonio Banks, 51. What a list today. Isaiah Ryder, 53. That's Scotty's buddy. Greg Hansel, 53. Rod Smith, 54. Rex Waller, 54. Muhammad Oliver, 55. Merton Hanks, 56. John Thompson III, 58. Steve Levy, 59. Steve Finley, 59. Skip Holtz, checking in at 60. Happy birthday and feeling better to Darryl Strawberry at 62 today. And Dale Murphy, 68. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. All right. We welcome in all of our radio affiliates for Coast to Coast. Here on a Tuesday, Carver High in for Scotty. Davis Maddock joins me momentarily here. SportsGrid Radio, Sirius XM, Channel 159, Sports Byline, and the mightier 1090 ESPN Radio in sunny Southern California. Great to have everybody with us here today. All right. We do have live action going on, conference tournaments, Notre Dame and Georgia Tech. 45-35 at the half in that round one game. We also had UCF beating Oak State. First game at the Big 12 in Brooklyn. We have the A-10 going on. George Washington and LaSalle in a barn burner following an overtime game already. Fordham beating Davidson earlier this morning. That was like 11 a.m. tip out here in Brooklyn. West Virginia, Cincinnati coming up. St. Louis, Rhode Island among the afternoon games that we will keep our eye on here on C2C. NFL, second day, legal tampering. A lot happening. Derrick Henry, a new home. The Ravens for King Henry, 2 years and $16 million. Patrick Queen, another guy going to the division rival, to the Steelers for 3 for $41. Vikings getting Aaron Jones after he was released yesterday by the Packers. Another guy, division rival. We love this. We have a lot of backup quarterbacks, or maybe Sam Darnold will be a starter. I don't know. I can't wait to ask Davis that one. If you think Sam Darnold's going to be the guy in Minnesota on week one for the Purple, we shall see. Other backups, Drew Lock to the Giants, Jameis Winston to Cleveland. Darnell Mooney, how much money did this dude get? 3 years for $39 million for Darnell Mooney. I think he had 32 catches last year. So that'll get it done for you. Not bad for Mooney as he goes to the Falcons. Bengals traded Joe Mixon to Houston. We've got a lot of running back movement. As we know, we have a couple things that happened after we left the air yesterday we'll touch on, including the Giants getting Brian Burns from Carolina. Massive trade with a second and a fifth-round pick. 5-year deal for $150 million. So it is all happening. We've got some line movement in the NFL off of all this stuff. Some specials with a few of the guys that changed places yesterday. Kirk Cousins, Saquon Barkley. We'll get into all of that. Some Super Bowl line movement for those teams and divisions as well, as the Falcons are now clear favorites in the NFC South after getting themselves Kirk Cousins, and I'm sure the big Darnell Mooney signing today also helps that effect. Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News is with us every Tuesday on C2C. He'll join us in hour number one as well, where we have lots of hoops to discuss with Mike. who's on the bubble here this week, who needs wins, who needs multiple wins, who's getting the fourth number one seed. We'll do all that with Mike DeCourcy here today in hour number one. Second hour, a couple things with the baseball, including the Yankees, who love screwing this stuff up. This is why I've been screaming about Boone for 3 years now, maybe even longer than that. I'm so sick of how they do this. Sunday, Aaron Judge, he's fine. Nothing's wrong. Yesterday, he's just a little worn down. He needs a little rest. Today, by the way, I got an MRI yesterday. So that doesn't sound like it was nothing. I don't know why Aaron Boone and the Yankees feel the need to not give all the information. Maybe they think it's just going to magically go away. They told you for 2 months last year that Anthony Rizzo didn't have nothing was wrong with him and he had a concussion for 2 months. They basically told you for 2 months that there was nothing wrong with Aaron Judge's toe. And there was. I don't know what happened in that place. I don't know if it's Boone. I don't know if it's the people in the medical staff who are just imbeciles. I'm not really sure what the deal is with the Yankees medical staff, but they have got all kinds of problems. It sounds like the Dylan Cease trade market is heating back up. That's probably going to happen sometime soon. The Yankees are back in the fray because who knows what's going to happen with Cole. He's going to at least, it sounds like, miss the beginning of the season, maybe even longer. NBA last night, another triple-double for Luka. Didn't get to the 30 points, though. Mavs beat up on Chicago. Warriors beat the Spurs. How about that Trace Jackson-Davis posterizing of Wemby? That was a tough one for Wemby last night with Trace Jackson-Davis flying over him. Nuggets were down big to the Raptors, but they came back and beat him at home, 125-119. Celtics, no problem in Portland with the Blazers. Also, hour number two. We'll get into all of tonight's games, NBA. Philly and the Knicks, again, they played a 79-73 game the other night on Sunday. Do we go to the over tonight? Do we flip it back around 209, 210? We'll see. Indiana is in OKC against the Thunder. Boston back-to-back. They're in Utah tonight. Minnesota and the Clippers. Big game out west. Milwaukee is in Sacramento against the Kings. We'll have the Lions share with Coach Young. He's got some NBA plays for tonight. And I see he's getting involved in our WCC final out in Vegas. Gonzaga and St. Mary's, which will be part of our slate for tonight. That we'll get into. Bunch of tickets are on the line, including the NEC, Wagner and Merrimack. You got the Horizon final, the West Coast final, bunch of semis and a few of these other tournaments. We'll give you all the numbers for tonight around College Rack. Final hour. Got a little players for you. The players, of course, starts on Thursday, TPC Sawgrass. We had the Jay Monahan yearly State of the Union address this morning. Man, it's tough to listen to that guy talk. I'm surprised he's still running things with the PGA. Very difficult to listen to Jay tell you how everything is fine and good. Just get me all the best players in one spot, Jay. I don't really care how you have to do it at this point. Just try to. Also, Mike Blue at hour number 3. Gabe Morency's usually with us hour 1. He's with us hour 3 today on Coast to Coast. And we've got a big NHL slate tonight. And we will have to hear from our boy, Captain Kurtz. George Kurtz will be with us, and we'll go through all of the hockey. So Ferrall Coast to Coast on a Tuesday. Carver High in for Scotty. Davis Maddock is with me next. A full slate, lots of hoops. We've got NFL, the golf, NBA. It's all happening. We get it rolling on the grid right after this.
Boston's going to the NBA Finals, and at this point, I'm still willing to say this early that they're the best team in the NBA, even better, in my view, than the Nuggets.
Barkley, for me, I say the front runners would be the Dallas Cowboys and or the Philadelphia Eagles, and I think Jerry might get in on this and say just make it happen and get Saquon on our football team.
Ferrall Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Women's basketball, as a coach, as a basketball purist, is so much better to watch than the men. You don't believe me? Sit down, watch it for yourself. Think about the fact that the athleticism is different. So now you have to depend on your fundamental and your skill and not your athleticism.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
The books are treating the Celtics 4 points better at minimum than maybe every single team in the NBA. And so far, I believe they've covered every game since the break.
The Celtics' strict goal here, anything less than a finals appearance and a finals championship is going to be a failure for the Celtics. They got all the pressure in the world across the board here.
Game time decisions only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Ferrall coast to coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Is actually far more dangerous from 3 on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live. Prime time.
We got not 1, but 2 coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
5 minutes, fellas. 5 minutes.
I appreciate it, man. Oh, okay. You getting that bet in before the boom, huh?
Yeah, LA all the way.
What? Oh, come on, man. You know it's Boston, baby. Stop it.
KG, I understand why you said it, but it's LA.
Jay, are you serious?
You know what? It's LA.
Why are you standing up?
Because I got to stretch on out. Because it's LA. You know what? You ain't scaring me. Let me tell you something. That
It's
ain't
Boston, Boston, Boston.
It's LA.
And we are back, Ferrall, coast to coast here on a Tuesday. Carver High in for Scotty on SportsGrid and SportsGrid Radio. Great to have everybody with us. BetMGM, they're doing it again. They're giving away free money. It's unbelievable, really, when you think about it. How about betting $5 and getting $150 back instantly? You got to be kidding me. What are we going to do? Download the BetMGM Sportsbook app on iOS or Android, or visit BetMGM.com. Sign up and deposit at least $5 into your newly created account. It's for new customers. Place a wager in the amount of at least $5 at standard odds price. Once you have placed a bet, you will receive $150 in bonus bets regardless of the outcome of your wager. Win or lose. Make sure you use bonus code SG150. BetMGM, giving away free money again. And what a time of the year to do it with conference tournament week, March Madness, the players, NBA, NHL. It's all going on. Maybe an NFL future. Whatever you want to get in the mix with, it's there for you. All right. Usually Joe's with me on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, of course, here on C2C. Joe will be with me tonight, Carver and Lisi, SportsGrid Radio. But Joe out on assignment this afternoon. Every day we have Davis Maddock on Coast to Coast. But today we have the extended Davis Maddock experience on C2C with me. Davis, good to see you, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I mean, really, we barely had time to breathe the last 48 hours. There's been so much NFL stuff happening. I mean, I suppose no true marquee name. I guess Saquon Barkley and Kirk Cousins are relatively marquee names in the NFL, but a lot of stuff happening on the periphery. And really, the shoe that I am waiting to drop is what ends up happening with Justin Fields. Like, it's crazy to me, the idea that there is this insider idea now that's floating out there that maybe there's just no market for him at all, and the Bears just keep him and draft Caleb Williams and just have them both on the roster. You know, it seems insane on the face of it. Like, if you could get a third-round pick for Fields, you might as well take it. But maybe the organization is like, I guess Justin is a good enough guy. He's not going to raise a stink. Maybe they do just have both of them on the roster.
I was going to bring this up to you later. We'll do it now. I don't care. That seems to be like a very tough spot for both of those guys, don't you think? Like, I wouldn't want to put Caleb Williams in that spot, having the guy who's been there the last 3 years, the guy who has relationships with all the other players who have been there the past couple of years. Now, look, I mean, they're bringing guys in, Swift and, the Mooney's out. They obviously still have DJ Moore, and they're going to draft another wide receiver probably. But there's a lot of guys in that locker room who have played with Justin Fields the last couple of years that the first sign of things going bad, Davis, what is going to be the sentiment amongst the players in the locker room, the fans, and the media? Well, Justin Fields is there, so let's sit down, the first overall pick. It's just, there's so many things that could go wrong in that scenario. I don't see how you could possibly keep him around. I just don't.
You're definitely right. I mean, there is enough in the Chicago media contingent, national media contingent, that think Justin Fields is really good, that think Justin Fields could be a franchise quarterback, that it just sort of is, it would be a toxic atmosphere one way or the other. There'd be Team Caleb and there would be Team Fields. And those, I would guess, those spots would also probably exist in the front office and the coaching staff. Like maybe the owners are Team Caleb, but then the GM goes to the McCloskey family and says, we can't get anything for this guy. We got to just keep Fields. Then what? Then what do you do? I mean, that's a huge mess.
And you also have, and this is why I thought they should have maybe, if you were going to draft Caleb Williams, I thought they should have fired Eberflus and had a brand new coach, quarterback, starting together so that the new coach has nothing to do with Justin Fields. He's not worried about coaching for his job. So, I mean, because if Eberflus, he's got to be coaching for his job this year. I mean, they've been bad the past couple of yeyears. So if Eberflus is sitting there and he's 1-3 with Caleb Williams, what's he thinking in his head? So let me put Justin back in. And it's just so many things, snowball and roller coaster, out of keeping him. It's either one or two things for me, Davis. Either they're trading him for pennies on the dollar before the draft, or
McCarthy or Daniels. That kind of would have been a fun rabbit hole to go down. But at the end of the day, if you got to let Justin Fields sit on the bench, honestly, if you even have to cut him or trade him for what the Patriots did. The Patriots did this with Mac Jones because they realized, like, it's a toxic situation to be involved in. We can't have Mac Jones sitting on the bench when we take Drake May or Jane Daniels or whoever they take with that third overall pick because of what you just said. New coach, new front office. We bring in this guy, the new quarterback. Let's say Jane Daniels loses his first 4 games. There's definitely going to be some local media that says, well, why didn't they give Mac Jones a chance? Mac Jones was good as a rookie, right? He was. And you can't have that voice, and you can't have it on the team. You don't want their teammates thinking those things either.
That's why you sign a guy like Jacoby Brissett, which is what the Patriots did, because then, yes, there's the grizzled veteran who can help the rookie quarterback, but there's going to be nobody in early October at 1-4 going, man, we got to get Jacoby in there. We just really do. We got to make sure he plays. That would happen, like you say, if Mac was there. Now, I'm going to save the running back stuff. You mentioned marquee names. I would put Derrick Henry in the marquee name category at least from today's moves, but I'm going to save it till after the break because I want to kind of do all the running back stuff together, Davis, because I think it's fascinating that there's been like 12 running backs that are going to have new homes next year, like starting level running backs coming off what we had last year with a bunch of them getting tagged and nobody wants to pay them. Well, guys got paid. I mean, some of these guys made probably a lot more than we thought they were going to make. I'll leave you this 1 minute, and then we'll do the running backs after the break. You think the Vikings actually intend on playing Sam Darnold as their starting quarterback in Week 1?
I think that's their jetpack, their parachute, their safety valve if they're not able to move up. I think maybe they can move up to 6. That to me, looking at the draft, that looks like the thing that makes the most sense. They move up to 6. Maybe they give up their 2025 first-round pick and the number 11 to get to 6. They select J.J. McCarthy at 6 from the New York Giants spot. But if not, I do think if they're not able to make that move, I think that is their plan. I do think it's Darnold Week 1 if they're not able to make that move, which is crazy.
It is fascinating to me that Sam Darnold and Gardner Minshew are going to have seats at the table and Justin Fields isn't. Like that is kind of bizarre to me and weird, but
yeah.
That's clearly very possible at this point. All right, we'll come back. A few more things in free agency. Ferrall Coast to Coast on a Tuesday. Carver High and Davis Maddock in for Scotty. We got a lot more to do. Notre Dame up 11 now down in D.C. against Georgia Tech. Let's go. We're back after this.
Women's basketball, as a coach, as a basketball purist, is so much better to watch than the men. You don't believe me? Sit down, watch it for yourself. Think about the fact that the athleticism is different. So now you have to depend on your fundamental and your skill and not your athleticism.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Maybe not a match that we thought would be the most enticing 6 months ago, but Newcastle, they are kind of on the ropes. They looked awful against Blackburn in the FA Cup.
Lamine Yamal's been the stand-up player, a guy that's 16 years old, a guy that was drafted in from La Masia, from the academy. It says a lot, really. It says a lot about the really poor standard of the rest of the players this season.
Pro League Soccer powered by Marca, only on SportsGrid.
I think Boston's going to the NBA Finals, and at this point, I'm still willing to say this early that they're the best team in the NBA, even better, in my view, than the Nuggets.
Barkley, for me, I say the front runners would be the Dallas Cowboys and or the Philadelphia Eagles, and I think Jerry might get in on this and say just make it happen and get Saquon on our football team.
Ferrall Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
And we're back. Ferrall Coast to Coast here on a Tuesday. Carver High and Davis Maddock in for Scotty on SportsGrid and SportsGrid Radio. Great to have everybody with us. There is hoops going on. Notre Dame, as I said, going to the break. They're up 60-48. Lane 1.5, the first game of the ACC there in D.C. So the Irish, who played better down the stretch, I mean, they stink this year. They're 12-19. But they've got a chance to at least get themselves a win for Shrewsbury in his first ACC tournament. George Washington's up 7 on LaSalle in Brooklyn at the A-10. Cincinnati and West Virginia are underway. Second game of the day at the Big 12 tournament. 16-11 Bearcats. UCF beat Oklahoma State handily, 77-62 in the opening game there. St. Louis, Rhode Island's the third game of the day in Brooklyn. That's at 4:30 East. Louisville, NC State follows this Notre Dame game in D.C. Everything else later tonight, which we will discuss later on Coast to Coast. All right, Davis, the running backs. So Henry's going to go to Baltimore. 2-year deal, 16. It can get up to 20 with all the incentives, etc. And that's people have talked about that fit, I feel like, the last year and a half when there's been this discussion of Henry possibly leaving Tennessee or them possibly trading. Let's put Henry and Lamar together. What a crazy rushing attack that's going to be in Baltimore. And yeah, it does sound very enticing. But all in all, think about all these moves in the running back market together. Yesterday we did Barkley going to Philly. The Giants kind of fill that shoe by bringing Singletary. Packers bring in Josh Jacobs. They release Aaron Jones. He goes to Minnesota today. You saw Joe Mixon get traded to Houston. They signed Zach Moss in Cincinnati. The running back carousel has been pretty fascinating, Davis.
It has been fascinating. I think it is, the running back carousel and the backup quarterback carousel, I think, is the number one implication of the rising cap, which is teams are, one, they need those positions. Everyone needs a backup quarterback. Everyone does need a running back. You don't always need, some teams are just realistic about who they are. They don't need an elite wide receiver. They don't have the money to do so, or it's just not possible. It's like guards, running backs, and backup quarterbacks are getting all the money in this free agency. But it sort of was just a perfect storm of all these teams deciding not to franchise tag their running backs. The Cowboys let Pollard go. The Giants let Saquon Barkley go. The Bengals released Joe Mixon. There just was so much going on. And all these teams had money to spend. Thinking of the Philadelphia Eagles giving a big running back contract seems crazy to think of that last offseason. They got that whole room, Swift, Penny, Scott, and Gainwell. None of them made any money. I think the whole running back room was under $8 million. Now Barkley makes more than that all on his own. It is kind of stunning, but I do think it is the knock-on effect of that rising cap.
Do you think the Ravens are going to get one more huge year out of Derrick Henry here? It's not like he completely flatlined in Tennessee. I just felt this past year, Davis, he just didn't get the ball as much. They just kind of went in a different direction with their offense. We've seen the Ravens at work and how much they love to run the football. I feel like this is a good spot for them to maybe squeeze the last 2 really productive years possibly out of Derrick Henry's career.
I mean, I would say if Derrick Henry does still got it, which I would think he probably does. I mean, I don't think he is the same force of nature he was when he was 25, 26 or whatever that he is now. But he still was number 1 in the NFL in yards after contact last year, which you definitely would not have guessed by looking at him, by honestly, probably even by watching the Tennessee Titans play. But it was a really bad Titans team. The offensive line was not good. The quarterback play from Tannehill and Levis was really bad. They had no wide receiving threats to speak of. It was probably, that was probably the worst Titans team that Derrick Henry has had to play on. And now he's going to the exact opposite. He's going to 2-time NFL MVP quarterback. He's going to, and I know everyone, it's very fashionable right now to hate on Todd Monken after how bad he was against the Chiefs in that game. And he was but coaches can choke too. Coaches can have a bad game too. It doesn't mean that Todd Monken is terrible. It just means guy had a bad game in a tight spot. It kind of happens to everyone. But for regular season stuff, I think Henry, it's going to be the biggest running lanes he's ever had. Gus Edwards just had 15 touchdowns. How many could Derrick Henry score? 20, 25? He could score loads. He could score 2 a game with the way that offense works.
The Gus bust also on the lower end of all that running back movement as he's going out to Los Angeles. He goes from one Harbaugh to the other, out to the Chargers. The Austin Eckler was also kind of under the radar yesterday. There was so much happening that Eckler going to Washington was also kind of interesting. And I felt like also he got less money than everybody else too, considering how many touchdowns that guy has scored in the last 3 years. I thought that was kind of surprising.
And look, man, he got less money than Antonio Gibson did when he went to the Patriots. So he's replacing that pass-catching role in the Commanders' backfield, and Antonio Gibson got more money. Now, Gibson is probably going to be the Patriots' kick and punt returner. They value that stuff. Also, it's still the Patriots. I don't know how you feel about this. There's been this sort of current that, oh, it's a brand new Patriots, no Bill Belichick, like out with the old, in with the new. I don't believe that at all. I think it's so much of it is craft driven, deep Patriot state. Like that building, that organization is what it is. I don't think they're reinventing themselves, overnight, basically. But I feel bad for Austin Eckler. He's a really nice guy. Like, he does a fantasy football podcast on Yahoo. He's a cool dude. He, is an undrafted free agent, consistently outplayed Melvin Gordon, but because Melvin Gordon had that contract, didn't get to start until year 5 of his career. Like, just kind of one of those guys where his best performance never was able to reward him financially. He definitely could have made a lot more money in his career, if the timeline had just been a little bit different. And you do got to feel for him going to the Commanders on a pretty small contract.
Definitely. Commanders have done a lot of stuff, though. I mean, you've seen Quinn bring a lot of guys over from the Cowboys on both the offensive and the defensive line, shoring up that defense, of course, with Quinn being a defensive head coach. That's what they're going to try to do. Maybe play D and we're going to run it. That could be the way for Washington this coming year. A few other things. Falcons signed Darnell Mooney, 3 years, $39 million. I know we kind of were on, me and Scotty kind of gave Gabe Davis the business yesterday. We didn't think he's been obviously that good since the huge 4-touchdown game and the 13-second game, and he got a lot of money. I didn't have Darnell Mooney getting the same amount of money as Gabe Davis on my bingo card, Davis. I really didn't. I was kind of surprised. He had like 32 catches last year, Darnell Mooney. He got a pretty decent amount of coin from Atlanta.
He did. I mean, Atlanta was absolutely desperate for a wide receiver. Like, even if they do take one at pick number 8, now that they have their quarterback, they still, they're looking at playing like Mac Hollins and Scotty Miller as their rotational 4th and 5th wide receivers. They got no depth. They don't even have backup tight ends either. They had to sign Charlie Werner to a 12-year deal because they cut Jonnu. Like, they are hard up for guys to catch the ball. And, honestly, it is just a function of the wide receiver market, which is the only way to acquire one right now is in the first round. I mean, really, that is the only way to acquire a good wide receiver. You either got to trade your first-round pick or you got to draft one in the first round, because no one is trading no wide receiver is getting to free agency. It was rumored that the Chiefs were in on Mooney, and I think they talked to his agent and was like, 3 years, $39 million. Like, we're not doing that. We're not paying that for Darnell Mooney. But he also, he got kind of lucky, because what it sounds like is happening now is that Calvin Ridley is going to wait until tomorrow after the legal tampering window to re-sign with the Jaguars so that they don't have to give up the pick. And it sounds like they're going to give him a lot of money. And he was really the only, I guess Hollywood Brown was the other marquee free agent on the board. And I don't know, would you rather have Darnell Mooney or Hollywood Brown? Like, their best NFL season, not really that dissimilar from one another, really, at this point.
No, I probably would keep that $39 million. Probably is less than what Hollywood Brown's going to get, although maybe not. Who knows? You never know with what's going to go on. But I saw that with Ridley too. A lot of interest from the Patriots, but I guess he prefers to stay in Jacksonville with the Jaguars. He's going to try to get that worked out tomorrow. All right, backup quarterback carousel, Drew Lock, Giants, Jameis Winston to the Browns, Jacoby Brissett to the Patriots. So everybody's kind of filling in those backup roles that will go on. Kirk Cousins yesterday we talked about. NFC South. The Falcons now, Davis, the heavy favorites here. In fact, this board I've got for you says that they're even money after signing Cousins, 79% of the money on the Falcons to win the division. I've even seen that at minus money now, Davis, in places for the Falcons to win the NFC South.
Yeah, I'm not taking that wager. I think it's probably right that the Atlanta Falcons are the odds-on favorite to win that division. Actually, if it drifted far enough, you could tempt me into betting the Buccaneers. The Falcons are just going to be so good on offense. They really are. Like, this guy, the Zach Robinson guy who comes in from that Rams, Shanahan, McVay coaching tree, and then you get Kirk Cousins in there, who obviously just smashed with Kevin O'Connell last year. Pitts, London, Bijan. It's actually Mooney. For like the first time, and I can remember Mooney. Yeah, they're gonna be so fun on offense. They really are.
I have some Cousins specials for you. I'm going to give you those at the end of the hour. Same with Barkley and Russell Wilson. After I talk to Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News, we will get back into some of this stuff. All right, Ferrall Coast to Coast on a Tuesday. Carver High and Davis Maddock in for Scotty on SportsGrid and SportsGrid Radio. We'll come back. It is championship week. Selection Sunday is this week. Mike DeCourcy, the Sporting News, next on the Grid.
Women's basketball, as a coach, as a basketball purist, is so much better to watch than the men. You don't believe me? Sit down, watch it for yourself. Think about the fact that the athleticism is different. So now you have to depend on your fundamental and your skill and not your athleticism.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Maybe not a match that we thought would be the most enticing 6 months ago, but Newcastle, they are kind of on the ropes. They looked awful against Blackburn in the FA Cup.
Lamine Yamal's been the stand-up player, a guy that's 16 years old, a guy that was drafted in from La Masia, from the academy. It says a lot, really. It says a lot about the really poor standard of the rest of the players this season.
Pro League Soccer powered by Marca, only on SportsGrid.
I think Boston's going to the NBA Finals, and at this point, I'm still willing to say this early that they're the best team in the NBA, even better, in my view, than the Nuggets.
Barkley, for me, I say the front runners would be the Dallas Cowboys and or the Philadelphia Eagles, and I think Jerry might get in on this and say just make it happen and get Saquon on our football team.
Ferrall Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
And we are back, Ferrall, Coast to Coast, here on a Tuesday. Carver High in for Scotty on SportsGrid and SportsGrid Radio. Great to have everybody with us here today, every week. It is great to have Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News with us, and we have finally made it. It is Conference Championship Week. Sunday is Selection Sunday, so we're less than a week away. Next week is the NCAA tournament. We are finally there, Mike. It is great to see you. It's the best couple weeks of the year.
Oh, it is the best month. And I love this week. It's there's a lot of complaints about the conference tournaments, in part because of eliminating teams like Appalachian State, which would be great to have in the tournament, but they sort of dropped the ball on their own in their conference tournament, in part because others view these games as not essential, but I just don't understand. Like, somebody offers me more cake, and it's guaranteed calorie free, I'm going to take the cake. And that's basically what we have here. This is a calorie-free dessert. You can gorge as much as you want, and it doesn't add anything to your waistline. You can't beat that.
You really can't, Mike. And honestly, there is a lot of stuff on the line this week. And I know maybe there isn't for teams like UConn and Houston and Purdue, who kind of know where they're going to be. And it's not the end of the world if they lost in the semis of their conference tournament or whatever. But there's so much on the line for bubble teams. There's so much on the line for teams that know they're out, and maybe they catch a little bit of fire. You had Oregon State a few years ago that won the Pac-12 tournament, made the Final 8. So, I mean, teams dream like this, and you mentioned some of these teams that lose in these conference championship games. I saw you kind of having a little back and forth with some people on Twitter about this over the weekend, and that, of course, was Indiana State losing to Drake in the Missouri Valley Conference game. And both teams have had outstanding years. Drake was a tournament team last year, had a tough loss to Miami in that tournament, and I thought they were going to win, and they did. Everybody loves Indiana State because of the big kid. And people were kind of saying to you, well, I'd rather watch Indiana State in the tournament than a 17-13 Villanova team or the 9th team in the Big Ten or anything like that. And I kind of like how you responded, Mike. Like, I'm glad that you would rather do that, but that's not quite how it works in the NCAA tournament. That's not what it is.
Yeah, on the selection committee's list of criteria, I'd rather doesn't show up at all. And thankfully for that, it's not the way that any championship should be run. It should be based on what have you achieved. And in the case, the beautiful thing about the NCAA men's basketball championship is that every team that plays Division I basketball, with the exception of Chicago State, but I believe that's going to be corrected, and the transitioning teams, but hey, they signed up to transition. They knew what the price was. Everybody else has the opportunity to play their way into this thing. And if you don't play your way into this thing, then you leave it up to the committee. And the committee has a set standard of criteria that are logical and based in reality. And they may not always be applied perfectly because they're being applied by human beings. But for the most part, the committee does a very good job. There are quibbles that I've had over the years, and there have been some mid-major teams that I thought were accomplished enough to make it, but were not included. I think of Monmouth. Don't remember the year. I'm going to say 2017. When they beat Notre Dame, Georgetown, and USC, and then went like 15-3 in their league, and they got punished for the 3 road losses. And it's like, come on, everybody loses on the road, and they didn't let them in. That was a bad decision. And Murray State went from Thanksgiving to the championship game of their Ohio Valley Conference then, and they lost on a tip-in at the buzzer. So a three-pointer, it was a buzzer shot, whatever. And they lose that game, and they don't get in. That was wrong. But there aren't many of those. And Indiana State, I'm not sure classifies as that. I have them in my field right now. But what I don't like about Indiana State's resume, love their metrics. I love the fact that they won the league. I don't love the fact that they played 3 times against Drake and lost twice. And so what I mean by that is if they had played Drake 3 times and won the 2 regular season games and then lost the final, then it's a hard luck story. It's, they were better all year, but they didn't get it done in the conference tournament final. But that's not the case here. And so what else? Okay, so they didn't dominate their top league competition. They weren't even superior to them. Then they played a couple of tough non-conference games, lost them both, Alabama, Michigan State. And then there's not a whole lot else to build it on. Do you get into the NCAA tournament because you swept Bradley? Bradley was very good, but not elite. I just don't know that there's 100% enough there. That's why I kind of was rooting for Indiana State to win that game. No offense to Drake. Great story, great team. I didn't want to have to make this decision, man. I didn't want to have to try to read the committee's mind on this. I based on the metrics, I erred toward the side of having them in the field, but I don't know whether they slide off this bubble in the wrong direction still. I have to think it's possible.
Staying with the bubble here now, and Indiana State's one of those teams that will be sweating here, hoping for chalk in these conference tournament games over the next few days. They do not want to see any Cinderella stories out of the power conferences go and steal any bids that are already not available to them. Let's keep on the bubble. What do you have right now as your last four in? Who do you think, just by looking at, who's got maybe a road in one of these tournaments that maybe they can ring off a couple of games and really help themselves over the next 3 or 4 days? Who are you focusing on here that has a chance to do some big things in these conference tournaments?
Well, if we want to look first at the last four in, Wake Forest, Colorado, Indiana State, Texas A&M, as of now, my bubble, again, is more precarious than other bubbles because I don't account for regular season champions as the effective champion of the league. So Dayton, if they lose, somebody's coming off the bubble. FAU, if they lose, somebody's coming off the bubble. So if you are at the very edge on my bracket, that's a problem for you, even more so than it is for others. So those are the four that are on the edge. In the grouping of the first four out, I have Villanova, Providence, Pitt, and New Mexico. And then really not that secure. I have Seton Hall and St. John's as the last two teams on my 10 line. Also Michigan State on my 10 line. I don't think any of those 10s is secure. I think if they failed in their conference tournaments, that would be problematic. Seton Hall, St. John's, I think is sort of bubble central for this week. They play each other. They're fierce rivals. They play each other in Madison Square Garden. And they play, and I will say that if St. John's loses that game, I think it could eliminate them. I won't say it's definitive. It would depend on other results, but that would be really problematic for them. Slightly less so for Seton Hall because they already have two against the Red Storm. But whoever wins that game is going to be able to breathe. And whoever loses it is going to be holding that breath until Sunday night.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if it's a pure elimination game because you're right. I think Seton Hall could absorb the loss. They lose a 64-63 game on a last second. Michigan State's interesting. And you're right. They're going to sweat if they lose to Minnesota in that first game. There's going to be a lot of sweat for Tom. And we know, like you said, people say things like, well, they always want to have Izzo in, and they always want Izzo in the tournament. It doesn't work that way. It's about the body of your work and what you've done so far this year. You mentioned a couple of those teams, Florida Atlantic and Dayton. Those conferences, which I think are pretty good, but they're not as good as, say, the Mountain West this year, which is going to have an unbelievable amount of teams in the tournament. I think FAU and Dayton both could absolutely lose this week. Richmond has been very good this year. South Florida has been very good. Do you have anyone else in either of those conferences besides Dayton and FAU right now?
No, I do not. Because I don't play the game. It's just I don't think it's right to put the first place team in a league into the field if they are not a tournament team just because they're in first place when none of the leagues presents their automatic bid to the first place team. You have to win the tournament. So South Florida is not a tournament team for me now. And honestly, of the teams in the American Conference, I would place them relative to FAU. I would place them probably about the third in line of the teams that I would most expect would win if it's anybody other than FAU. I would certainly put Memphis ahead of them. I might put UAB ahead as well. I think that Amir Abdur-Rahim has done a ridiculously good coaching job, but it's something that I just don't know that they're ready to win 3 games in 3 days at this stage. And I look at the same way in the Atlantic 10. I think there are probably teams I would take over Dayton to win right now. With the way the Flyers have played their biggest games, they have not shown up for those games. On the road, Richmond, no good. On the road, George Mason, no good. That's a team I worry about relative to achieving enough to get in the conference tournament, achieving the automatic bid, and therefore taking a bid, by not winning, taking a bid away from the bubble. That if I'm a bubble team, that's the team I worry about the most, other than the team that's right in front of me.
In fact, I think the team, and I watched Dayton play Loyola, I guess a week and a half ago or something. That was a Friday night game, and
yes,
Loyola's lost like one game in the last like month and a half in that conference. I think that's the team that could cause Dayton some problems in that league and go ahead and win that tournament in Brooklyn this week. Your fourth number one seed. We know the deal with the first three. They're going to be there. Who's got the inside track here between Tennessee, North Carolina, Arizona? If all three, let's say, win their conference tournaments, who's it for you?
Yeah, if all three win, Arizona has no shot at it. I mean, the other two would absolutely have to face plant, and I don't think that would even do it. Arizona took themselves out of the one seed conversation when they lost to USC. You are not in this field. You are not getting a one seed that lost to the three bottom teams in their conference, and that's what Arizona did. Mike, I don't know. I'm not one of those people that can go through the record book and find interesting factoids like that by researching it. My friend Harold Shelton at the Big Ten Network could probably tell me in 2 seconds. But I can't imagine the last time there's been a major conference team that lost to the last three teams in their league. That's just an unbelievable factoid that's happened. It comes down to Carolina, Tennessee. Carolina has the advantage of having beaten the Vols earlier in the season, but it was a Carolina home game, so that takes some of the glory out of that. But the best resume right now is Tennessee. Carolina could conceivably change that, but Tennessee will have to falter. In your scenario, it's definitely Tennessee because the teams that they will climb over are better than the teams generally that Carolina will climb over.
Yeah, they're going to have better wins this week if they end up winning the SEC championship. 10 seconds, Mike. Gonzaga or St. Mary's tonight?
I got the Zags. I think they are ready to climb even higher on my seed list.
Mike, next week we'll have a bracket. It's here, baby. Mike DeCourcy, the Sporting News. We're back coast to coast right after this.
Women's basketball, as a coach, as a basketball purist, is so much better to watch than the men. You don't believe me? Sit down, watch it for yourself. Think about the fact that the athleticism is different. So now you have to depend on your fundamental and your skill and not your athleticism.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Maybe not a match that we thought would be the most enticing 6 months ago, but Newcastle, they are kind of on the ropes. They looked awful against Blackburn in the FA Cup.
Lamine Yamal's been the stand-up player, a guy that's 16 years old, a guy that was drafted in from La Masia from the academy. It says a lot, really. It says a lot about the really poor standard of the rest of the players this season.
Pro League Soccer powered by Marca, only on SportsGrid.
I think Boston's going to the NBA Finals, and at this point, I'm still willing to say this early that they're the best team in the NBA, even better, in my view, than the Nuggets.
Largely, for me, I say the front runners would be the Dallas Cowboys and or the Philadelphia Eagles, and I think Jerry might get in on this and say just make it happen and get Saquon on our football team.
Ferrall Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
And we are back from Coast to Coast here on a Tuesday. Carver High, Davis Maddock in for Scotty on SportsGrid and SportsGrid Radio. Great to have you with us. Notre Dame has completely melted at the ACC tournament. They just gave up a 3 to Georgia Tech, 77-74, about 5.5 minutes to go in this game. Damon Stoudemire is the coach for Georgia Tech. He's going nuts on the sideline. Just you'd think he wants to. I mean, he's wants to get back in there. You think he's back in his playing days in Toronto, the way Stoudemire is going right now. All right, Davis, I've got this for you. Some specials for some of these players that got some new homes yesterday. I want to start with Cousins. Look at some of these numbers. 4,000 yards, minus 115. 30 tutties, plus 150. 35 tutties, plus 450. 4,500 yards. How about 40 tutties at 12 to 1? Davis buying in on the Cousins numbers here.
I would not bet. I wouldn't bet the the median ones. Like I wouldn't bet 4,000 passing yards or 30 passing touchdowns because it feels like. A lot of ways when you're betting overs for them to miss. Cousins isn't 100% back from this Achilles. He misses a month, whatever. So I think if you're wanting to bet on the perfect storm, if you're wanting to bet on Drake London turns into wide receiver 1, Kyle Pitts goes nuts, Bijan Robinson is the best receiving back in the NFL, you want to bet the other ones. You want to bet 4,500 passing yards seems like a pretty good one. I know you're a fan of doing some parlays for things like these, like you do the Scotty Scheffler to win the Players Championship. Kirk Cousins throw for 4,500 passing yards. You just have that one sitting staring at you for the next 6 months. I don't hate it.
Had the old $10 8-leg parlay last night to try to push myself a Scotty Scheffler ticket for this weekend, and the only thing that let me down was the Islanders puck line, plus 1.5 out in L.A. So we'll try again today, Davis, because I am not paying plus 550 for Scotty Scheffler this weekend at TPC Sawgrass. Hour 2, Coast to Coast, next, right after this.